Hey guys, welcome to the YouTube channel. Today we're going to be doing a CCV reroute on a 2016 Powerstroke. That being my 6.7. Here it is. So if y'all want to see anything else on it, just let me know. It does got a couple of aftermarket things on it. But let's jump into it. CCV reroute on a 2016 Powerstroke. So here's under the hood of the 16. And if you don't know what the CCV is, it's right here, crankcase ventilation. They typically get pretty clogged up with what they do is they take all of the crankcase pressure and it vents through there, and it's basically your filter for that. And when they do get stopped up, they pretty much cause more blow by than you're supposed to have, and it can cause issues with oil backfeeding into like turbo, intercooler, all of that. So SPE and a couple other companies make a reroute kit for it, and basically it just vents it off. I got the one with the baffle, so we're gonna jump into it, and we'll see how it goes. So first off, what you're gonna want to do is you're gonna have to pull this top fuel filter just so you have access to a lot. Your first connection is just going to be this little push connector here. So you're basically going to push it in, push these in, and then you'll pull out. I had already disconnected it because I didn't know how much trouble it was going to give me. And then this line here, all you do is you do the same thing, you push it in, but instead you're going to pull these two tabs back and down, and you'll see that little connector pop, and then you just pull that one off as well. So then your two fuel lines will be off. You twist this top fuel filter counterclockwise and it just pulls out. You can set that to the side wherever you want to. I'm going to set it outside of the truck so I'm not leaking diesel everywhere. So you'll now want to take your hot side off, and it goes right there on the turbo to this here, pretty much. And then with your CCV, you know, you're rerouting all that stuff into your turbo. As you can see, there's a bunch of oil in there, or a little bit rather. But with this clamp here, they can be a pain in the ass sometimes. All I do is put two screwdrivers, one on each side, pop it up, get this little tab out of here, and then lay it forward, and it'll pull right off of the turbo. And then this one's just a regular hose clamp. So it's pretty straightforward getting this off. Gives you a little more room in here opened up. Next I will pull the oil filler off, and then we'll have more access to that CCV back there. The oil filler is pretty straightforward. As you can see, it's just an 8mm bolt, and then you can see here it twists off. So you'll just twist it off, pull it out. Not very hard, gives you a little more room, but this is CCV piping here. So you will need to get that off, and that's what we'll be doing next. We'll be getting this little pipe off here, and then we will focus on getting the actual filter out. So I have just popped the CCV loose, but I wanted to show, you know, exactly what I did. There's a 10mm there. In that hole there is a 10mm stud type down here where my finger is. I did have to bust the high pressure fuel lines loose, so you're gonna have an 8mm there and an 8mm back here. You got two of them, one right there, the other one right there, just so you can get a little bit of wiggle in this. You will pull a stud out of that hole right there where my finger's at, and then you will have two in the back. I don't know how good we'll be able to see them because of fuel lines. Yeah, we're not gonna be able to see them, but there is two back there. You can see one right there, and then the other one's further back closer to the firewall. They're all going to be 10mm, and I did get all of them pretty much with this setup here, just a 1/4" ratchet, a probably looks like a 2" extension, and then a deep 10mm socket. But here's all 4 bolts that hold it in, and as you can see, the CCV is loose. This is the stud that I was talking about. It's just got a wiring harness that kind of slips over it on the stud side, but yeah, it's just 4 bolts, and then you will be able to pull it out. So we'll pull it out and we'll get to installing the reroute. This is what your CCV will look like, as mine's dripping oil, but this is your CCV. I pulled it out hose and all just in case, you know, I ever do go back to stock. But those two bungs there, if you've got your CCV reroute in your hand, you will be able to tell where those go. Just set that down as it's not going back in. We'll jump back up here. But you will see where they both go inside of your cast valve cover. Sorry, while I climb up on here. That will be where your block off is, and your actual reroute go in there. So it's pretty straightforward. You just gotta, you know, kind of get a couple things off to be able to get that CCV out, because, you know, your fuel filter's in the way, and you got your intercooler piping that runs here. But pretty straightforward. We will go ahead to the installation of the SPE kit and show you how I'm going to route where the vent goes, and we'll go from there. I apologize, the whole video I've been saying SPE, but it's all SMEDING. I guess I was getting things confused as some parts I've ordered before. But in your SMEDING kit, you'll have your baffle and this flange here. And as you can see in here, there's a flat portion here. And on your baffle, there's a flat portion. So you'll know which way it goes. So your baffle is going to slide into this flange here like this. And then you will have this 90. One side's got an AN fitting, the other one side's got an O-ring. So your O-ring size will thread into your flange like so. You'll thread it in, and then you will button this nut up here to make sure that your O-ring is going to set so you don't have any leaks. And it does give you a little bit of leeway into where this 90 goes. I do like this kit more than the SPE kit. The SPE kit does not come with this 90. Rather, it comes with a nipple that comes straight off of this flange here. So when you have that nipple come off, you know, you still have to route down. So in that case, you could get a little bit of restriction where you start to make that 180 rather there. So that's why I preferred the SMEDING over the SPE. And then you've got your block off here. All it is you just put it in the hole and you will tighten down on this. I want to say it's a 5 mil, possibly a 4 mil. I will confirm that once I do the installation. And then here, this is going to go on, actually on the intake side of where the piping came off that routed to your CCV, and I will show where to go with that. So you basically just slide this on, and there's a little, you will have a little spot to put a zip tie where you've got a little shelf type thing where the actual connector slides in and clicks into. So I will show where you do that. You really don't have to put the zip tie on there due to how tight it fits on there, but it always makes me feel better, especially like when you're doing vacuum lines, anything like that. Anything that could possibly at one point pressure up and blow this thing off. So it's just a little bit of, you know, insurance for what you're doing. But we will get started on the installation. Here is the SMEDING kit. Here's the piece of hose that you're going to use for your routing down, and I will probably route somewhere next to the driver's side spring, somewhere in there into the fender well, just so it routes straight down. But we'll go from there and we'll get started with that. As you can see, my route for it's pretty filled up with oil, but this cap here will have an O-ring on it, and that's your, you know, your method of sealing. And then your bolt that you can see here in my hand will just go into this hole here where my thumb is at. And I do recommend putting the bolts in your hole on your cap first, so that way you can get it to line up, because it is a pretty tight fit and this thing does not like to rotate within this hole here. So I'll get that installed and I'll show y'all what that looks like, and then we will go to the back for the actual reroute. So as you can see here, I got the bolt in there. The cap's not in there all the way, but it is easier to get the bolt in first, like I said earlier. So you'll get the bolt started, you'll have your cap in, and then you'll pretty much just work it around, and it will snap in. You'll know that you are all the way seated when you don't see any O-ring here, and then you will just tighten up your hold down bolt here. One thing I failed to mention was make sure that you clean your surfaces, so that way you get a good sealing surface. You don't want to leak through that O-ring, leak oil anywhere. I will be cleaning this one back here as well. It's good practice to make sure that all your surfaces are clean, especially on sealing surfaces. And like I said earlier, I would confirm what size these Allen bolts are. And they are all 5 mils, so that's the only thing you'll need is a 5 mil Allen. But we'll get this tightened up and then we'll go to installing this cap. Remember, you are going into a cast piece, so don't get too crazy with it. You don't want to pull the threads out. I just gave it a couple little snug pulls on it with a 3/8 ratchet, not a too big of one, just a regular 3/8 ratchet, and that's installed. So like I said, just make sure to clean your surfaces. You got one hold down bolt there, and this part is done. So we will now go to the back here, and you know, I'll show y'all how to throw that in there and how to route that hose, and we'll go from there. All right, so like I had said previously, here's your baffle flange. This will go onto the truck, and I've already made up the hose. So you will just thread this 90 into your flange here, and you got an O-ring here, so that's your sealing there, and this is your sealing against your cast piece on the truck. And you have an AN fitting here, so you don't need Teflon, O-ring, anything. This is a self-sealing fitting here. So all I did was I snugged it all up with a crescent wrench, and I will snug it up in the truck again. One thing to note though is that when you're putting the baffle into the truck, as you can see here, you got holes on one side and then your other side's blank, and you have this sort of kilter design here, and it just basically makes the baffle work more efficiently. I guess this is how SMEDING wanted to design it, but your holes will go on the firewall side. Just make sure to put it in like that. If you don't, I'm assuming your baffle is not going to work as designed. So we will go ahead and put this in, and I'll show y'all how it looks and show y'all all of the installation steps. One other thing to note though is that you will come out of this fitting here with your 90-degree fitting. So just make sure that you don't thread far enough to where you're going to hit your baffle that goes actually into the truck, because if you do, you're not going to get a good seal there, which I guess you still could because of where it seals at, but you'll be pushing this down, and you could basically cause some separation and have some sealing issues. So just make sure to take note of that, and like I said, know how all of your fittings seal and all of that, and you'll be good to go. So we'll go put it in the truck now and route it and get everything cut and throw some zip ties on it to route it where we need it and put everything back. You're going to want your holes to be towards the back, and disregard what I said earlier about making up the hose, especially on this SMEDING kit. It makes it a little more of a pain, and you can't tighten up these hold down bolts. So what I'm going to do is I undid the hose. I will put your other flange on there, and then I will go back with the 90. The hose is already routed. As you can see, here's the top of it. It will need to be trimmed, and then it routes down. I will zip tie it up to get out of that sensor there on their brake booster, but it is going to go into the front fender well. But I will show how I'm going to do that, mainly to get it out of the fuel lines that are back here, right here where my pinky is. Those are fuel lines that feed your return and your feed to your top fuel filter housing. So I don't want to get into those and possibly cause an issue with hose clamps and such of rubbing through. So I decided to route it this way coming back, and I will show that routing, but first I'm going to get this on there, show y'all how that looks, and then we'll get the hose. Got this installed. Both of your hex keys are in there. Just a reminder, those are 5mm hex keys. As you can see, the holes in your baffle / catch can, whatever you want to call it, are towards the firewall in the back. But now we will go ahead and put the 90-degree fitting on, which is this one that is included in the kit. And we will route the hose and get everything buttoned up so we can do a startup and y'all can see what everything looks like. Cleans up rear of the engine bay a little bit next to your upper intake back by the turbo and all of your lines and such, so it looks a little cleaner, and it's always nice to have a little bit of SMEDING parts. We have the reroute installed, everything tightened up. That's what it's going to look like. like I said before, I routed it this way. You come in front of the brake booster. I'm going to cinch up to that bolt there, and then we will run down and route it down to the fender well, see where we can, you know, tie it off there. So after we do that, I'll show you a little video of where it's routed, how it's gonna look, and then we'll button everything back up top. Fuel filter, intercooler piping. We'll put this little cap on. And one thing that I failed to mention is that you will have a sensor here, and if you do not have the truck tuned, my tuner's got this sensor tuned out because a lot of people do that CCV reroute. If you don't have the truck tuned, let me jump off the truck right quick. This is what you will have to do. Your sensor goes plugged up here. So what you'll have to do really is just cut here and then put your cap somewhere in here. All this is a Hall effect sensor. It doesn't have any type of flow or anything. So you won't get a check engine light if your truck's not tuned. If your truck's completely stock, and you still want to do the CCV reroute, you can on a 1516. You will just have the cap here. You will leave this back on. You'll snap this back on onto the turbo side, and you'll be good to go. No check engine light or anything. So yeah, let's get it wrapped. We now have the CCV reroute installed, and it is routed. Goes under your fuel lines there. You typically use that little double zip tie method where you got a zip tie wrapped around the hose, and then you got one wrapped around that bolt there, just to really hold it out the way, keep it out of that sensor down there on the brake booster. I held it pretty tight there, but then you go down here into the fender well, and what I opted to is I routed down, just got a zip tie holding it there, and then you come down. But when you come down, and if you choose to route this way, getting under the truck, this arm here is one of your pivot points for your suspension, because these Fords got a straight axle in them. So this zip tie here is pretty loose, and that's just to accommodate for travel in here. You don't want, like, if it travels down, you don't really want it to pull this hose. So this one's really loose, just to give that hose some leeway to go up and down. But that's just the way that I chose to route it, just coming up through there and then down here, and then it will just obviously route to the ground. But we'll get it all buttoned up, and then we'll do a start up and see if we can find any leaks or anything. All right, guys, so just one thing to note: whenever you do pull the upper fuel filter out, it's always a good idea to prime the system. So I've already primed it 4 times, and when I say prime, in case you aren't familiar with it, you just put the key in the ignition, turn it to the on position, and you wait until you can't hear the fuel pump running anymore. Cut it off, pull the key back out of the ignition, throw it back in, and then just keep doing it over and over again. I typically do it 4 or 5 times, so I've already did it 5 times, and we're gonna go ahead and do the initial startup now. So we'll put the key in, let it prime for a couple seconds, and then we'll start it. Typically I don't have any issues starting it. As you can see right here, here's my monitor for my EasyLink, which is just an iPhone. No check engine light, like I said, from that sensor for the CCV, so no issues there. My tuner was correct on, you know, they tuned it out. So let's go and check under the hood of the truck, make sure we don't have any fuel leaks, any oil leaks, anything like that. I mean, everything sounds fine. Typically I just feel right here, see if I can feel any pressure coming out. If I don't feel anything, then I'll come up here, kind of run my hand around here. Don't feel any, you know, unnecessary amount of oil. There is obviously going to be some residue. And then back here where the actual reroute is, I don't feel anything out of the norm, rather than residue. And as I said, you know, it's routed down, and whenever you do this reroute, you can actually go down here or wherever you routed it to, you can put your hand at the bottom of the reroute where the hose comes down, and you can actually feel the pressure coming out, which is all actually the pressure that's being fed back into the intake and all of that, which is, you know, not too great. Ford engineers, you know, designed it that way, and you know, that's why people like SMEDING, Sinister, all of them will, you know, make differences and, you know, make kits to do things like this. But here is that little block off that I was telling you about, and I put the zip tie on there. And then if you've got a 15 or a 16, you know, you got this connector here. It's always a good idea, just for reliability issues, you don't want to cause any shorts or anything. Even though the check engine light is turned off, you still got voltage and stuff running through it. So I always tape my connectors up. Like you can see a connector here, that's actually for my 5 position that I disconnected, but I taped that one up too. But you know, it's always a good idea to tape them up. It could cause problems. But yeah, there it is. It is completely installed. No real big issues. We'll go through some other things, and so here we'll do a little walk around of the truck, just so y'all can see what it is. 2016 Lariat. It does have the Morimoto headlights. That's about it with the front end. It is the EGR is out of it. It's got a 5-inch exhaust with a 6-inch tip, not leveled or anything. SMB intake. It does have helper bags in the rear, as you can see right there, with a B&W turnover gooseneck hitch. I do have a Gator bed cover, as you can see, with some Recon tail lights, the all LED tail lights that Recon offers, with the B&W tow and stow receiver hitch, 6-inch tip, as you can see there, all 5-inch from the downpipe. But yeah, there's the truck. I mean, got a little bit of work done to it, tuned through proven. It was my daily until diesel prices went up, so then I bought a little TDI, which I may do some videos over that too, just some simple things. I've also got a 2003 half-ton Chevrolet race car that is basically a bench right now. But here's all the tools that you'll need for the job. Crescent wrench was for all the fittings, because I didn't have a wrench big enough which crescent wrench will work. A 3/8 inch ratchet, and this was just for my 5mm hex, and then a 1/4 inch ratchet with an extension, and then an 8mm and a 10mm, a couple of flatheads to get some of the connections off, mainly for like the intercooler piping, and then I use my impact for the hose clamp on the intercooler piping. And if you don't have a magnet, I would suggest getting one, putting it in your box, just making it part of the tools that you have. They come in handy. I almost dropped a couple bolts, but I had a magnet as a backup on it, and didn't drop them. So overall, pretty good, you know, install. Didn't really have any issues with much. Sorry I don't got a big fancy garage like some of the YouTubers. It's just a regular garage, regular, you know, Harbor Freight toolbox with, you know, regular tools. I don't have all the fancy stuff, so I may do with what I have. But if there's any questions, you know, just like, comment, subscribe. I can answer them as best I can. I may do some videos on the Chevrolet, the Volkswagen and such, possibly the race car at one point if I put a motor back in it. But yeah, thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe.